Hello.
Hello.
We're in this room for Adoptable goats near me. What I googled the year I became a developer. My name is Qymana, but we'll get into that a little bit later. I just want to start off with some housekeeping stuff real quick. I work at a company called Bounteous. We create big picture digital solutions that help leading companies deliver transformational brand experiences, which is a fancy way of saying we do all the things, and it's really helpful for all of our clients. We have lots of analytics people and design and development, and we do like Drupal and AEM. We're also hiring, so we have a table out in the sponsor area if people want to go have a chat. Next, if you go to mid.camp/274, you can give me feedback on this session. Hooray! I would personally greatly appreciate any feedback. This is only my second time doing this session, so it's still in the works. And also, Contribution Day is on Saturday. It's from 10 to 4, but Amy June is doing a training from 10 to noon, and I went at Florida Drupal Camp, and it's a very, very great training. If you've never done any contributions to Drupal, I would highly suggest going because it's super fun. Everyone is very nice and supportive. You don't even have to be a developer. You can do like documentation, which is like real important and kind of lacking. So if anyone wants to do, if you're just like marginally interested, I would highly suggest going to Contribution Day. We'd love to have you. There will be lots of friendly faces, including this one. So. Okay, so let's get into this. Who am I? I'm Qymana. My name is Qymana Bots, and if you Google my name, Qymana, this is more or less what you'll find. It's a bit of a mishmash of different things. There's like an IMDb page, a Bandcamp page for like some music. There's even a face cream. I think it's a face cream. Has my name. All of the things on here are relevant to me. It's a very, very strange tale. And our story starts roughly here. Back in 2016, this is like largely what you would get if you Googled me. Now if you Google me, there's a lot more like professional fancy things because I work for a lot of places. Like I work with things that have really great SEO, so now they're there. But before, it was a bunch of like kind of random things, like who is Qymana? Back in 2016, I was a teacher. I worked abroad. I just gotten back from a contract in China where I was developing a curriculum for a music school. And I had recently signed a 2-year contract to help develop a curriculum at an international school in Beijing. So you might be asking yourself, how do you go from like signing a contract to teach in Beijing to a Drupal developer person standing in front of a room full of people at a Drupal camp? Well, unfortunately, my mother was diagnosed in 2016 with stage 4 ovarian cancer. And by the end of the year, she had passed away. And I assumed custody of my then 9-year-old sister. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Qymana, why would you like entice me into this room with talk of goats and Googling stuff and then like hit me with this craziness? Like, why would you do this? Well, first, it's what happened chronologically. Second, I figure if I set the bar like low, if I start off on this like very low, sad note, you can only go up from here. But most importantly, to start with the point that there's something to learn from every experience. Now, this comes with a caveat. when I say there's something to learn from every experience, I'm not saying that you should definitely distill all of your trauma down into like swirly twirly font Pinterest images and share them across all your social media. That's not what I'm saying. Things don't need to be like distilled down into like tiny digestible pretty pieces that you can like slap on a postcard. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying when I talk about learning, I'm talking about just the simple act of gaining knowledge. So when I go throughout my day, when I am like living my life, especially in times of high stress or when things are not going according to plan, I like to look back on my experiences and think, what do I know now that I didn't know then? And the acquisition of knowledge doesn't need to be, oh, well, I did this thing and hey, magically now I know how to like do my taxes, or oh, I experienced this thing and now I can write Drupal migrations. I don't know. It doesn't have to be like this happened and now this. It's just like I've learned a thing. I have acquired a new nugget. I know now, having gone through that kind of trying experience, that I know more about how I handle stress and how I move about the world. I know a little bit about guardianship laws. I know I know a lot more things, and they're not necessarily things that are like concrete, tangible, or practical for that matter. But knowing, like being aware of that act of gaining more knowledge, being more aware of like myself and my surroundings is valuable in and of itself. So as the time kind of continued, 2016 had wrapped up, and I had learned a lot through the experience of losing my mother and taking custody of my sister. But I still had a lot more to learn. And I got to a point where I needed to start thinking seriously about like the rest of my life. And so what that meant is considering where I was. So at the time, I was a teacher. I wasn't a licensed teacher in the United States. I was teaching overseas, and they don't necessarily require the same licensure and stuff. So I also knew that like while the majority of my experience professionally had been in education, I wasn't necessarily thrilled about the idea of being an educator in the United States. As you may be well aware, teachers are not treated particularly well in the US. And so I started trying to think about other things that kind of held my interest. Like, what did I enjoy doing? So I thought about coding and programming. I made some small, like, dinky video games here and there, and I played around with the idea before, but I'd never considered it to be like something that I was going to pursue professionally. But when I made that decision, I started looking at coding boot camps, and I ended up selecting a coding boot camp called Dev Boot Camp. They're now defunct, but it was, while I was there, it was a really, really great experience. It was an intensive program that was total about 18 weeks. And it started off with 9 weeks remote learning, like web development fundamentals, and then like 9 weeks on site, where you were there for like 16-hour days sometimes, from like sun up, sundown, and you were just like thrust into this this thing where you had to like pair program and like figure out how to solve these problems in a way that like was going to like help you like really retain that information, right? Because at the end of the day, you're doing this boot camp to jump into an entirely different career, learning learning enough information and how to do things so that you can be competitive in a job market with people that went to school for this stuff. So it was, needless to say, it was a very, very high stakes environment where like learning the information and retaining that information and being able to like replicate those processes super important. So I had to kind of think back to my teacher days and be like, oh well, dang it, I know how learning works, right? I know how my own learning works. So let's apply these things so I don't drown in all this this information that's getting thrown at me. So the first thing, like the first strategy that I kind of adopted was like, I recognized that context is key. And when I say this, I mean the context in which you are like learning these things. If you are constantly like just at your desk in front of the computer every day doing the same thing, your retention might not be as good as if, for example, one day you're at your computer, or like the next day you move to your kitchen table and start doing things. Like studies have shown that just like small changes in the context in which you're like obtaining this information helps you retain the information and helps you like generalize it to a bunch of different scenarios. So it's similar to like how if you're teaching a dog to sit, I don't know if you've ever tried to train a dog, but if you are every day in front of the refrigerator telling your dog to sit, and the dog sits beautifully in front of the refrigerator, but you like move to like in front of your couch and try the same thing, the dog gets kind of confused. Dogs have a hard time generalizing. So like in order to reinforce that behavior and that learning, doing it in a bunch of different places and like providing a bunch of different stimuli will reinforce that behavior and that learning to a point where that recall is reliable. And it works the same with like you or I when we're learning information. Test yourself. Testing yourself is a really, really great way to like add stakes to your learning and really make sure that you have like acquired the knowledge that you think you have. This works both ways as well. Like if you are testing yourself on certain information, you then know like what you need to like go back and review. This can also be effective like at the beginning of your learning where maybe you haven't like done anything and you want to like take a test, like a practice test or something like that, or like figure out like what the things you need to learn are, and then test yourself on those things so you can see like what information you already have, even if you haven't spent any time like actively developing that knowledge, and then come back and like test yourself again and see how much you've grown. It's a great way to like measure your growth as well. Also, teaching people is a great way to do both of those things, to marry both those concepts of changing up the context and testing yourself. I was lucky enough to have a child at my disposal. Fun thing about children is that their vocabularies tend to be smaller, their attention spans tend to be much shorter. They also have no shame and they're very brutal. So if you're trying to explain something to a child, you have to be able to distill that thing down to like its most simple pieces. If you can explain something to a child, it demonstrates your understanding of like the different parts, where you don't have to rely on like jargon or like kind of technical things or any assumptions that you make about the other person. That like if you're used to talking to technical people about like technical problems, a really great way to test yourself is to talk to a non-technical person and see if the same person understands it, because that way you don't get to rely on the assumptions that you have about other people's knowledge. And the great thing about kids is that they'll tell you if they don't understand anything. They'll just like look at you and be like, I don't get it. And also, if I don't know if you've interacted with children like my sister, but she'll just kind of walk away. Be like, I'm done with this conversation now, and you've lost your chance to practice. So bye. But yeah, teaching people, children, going out and like doing outreach or like finding a person that you can mentor, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. But like those are really great ways to reinforce the things that you've learned. So as I went through this coding boot camp, I learned a lot, but I also didn't learn things as quickly as I wanted to. And it was full of very angry error screens and like very, very, very non-functioning code, as is expected when you're learning something new. And what that, as a person who is, I tend to pride myself on like my ability to like learn things quickly, but I really struggled. And this was one of the first times that I felt like truly challenged, that threat of failure was looming. So the value in this is that failure provides context and discomfort provides a catalyst. So failure providing context, like we established before, like context is very important. So the more like with you failing, like you get more information about like the process. So writing something and getting an error message, well, that's a new error message that I've never seen before. And had I not written that real bad code and made my computer very angry at me, I wouldn't have experienced this thing. So failing provides opportunities to gain a deeper understanding of moving parts. So if you are only successful, like if you are only ever like writing perfect code or like doing something successfully, like realistically, that's not how life operates. Things are going to be like on fire just all the time. And it's very rare that you're going to be able to operate in a perfectly, like everything is going as planned. And so failing at things, and when things break all the time, at least initially, like you get that extra context and that extra information. I am much better at debugging my code now because I have encountered so many errors. I've learned how to solve those problems. And had I not done that, I wouldn't have known, like I wouldn't have gotten that information I wouldn't have gotten the information like, oh, this problem is a thing that exists, and like to perform this function, I need these pieces. Okay, I will not forget those pieces in the future, and if I do, and it says this, I will know how to address that problem. And so, yeah, failing makes your knowledge more robust. It's not thin, it's not brittle, because you have all of this background to back it up. And so I have pictured here, like the different, it's like a diagram of different like learning zones, right? So when motivation and accountability are high and you feel like psychologically safe, you're in the learning zone. So when I say discomfort, I'm not talking about like, oh, I feel like emotionally exhausted in this situation, or I feel threatened, or I feel like just physically unsafe. Safety and discomfort are very different. It's kind of like Fatima was saying in her keynote, where discomfort is a sign that like you are challenging some assumptions or like your previously like believed knowledge, right? So you want to feel like you're being challenged, and when you are motivated and held accountable for things, and you also are in a state where you feel like safe, then that's like the prime area for you to learn. So, coding bootcamp. After days and days and weeks and weeks and weeks of coding and banging my head against the computer, and maybe one or two just like tearful coding sessions where I'm just like, why won't you work? I finished up, and it was the last day we had made our final project. It was my final project was this lovely story-based or location-based storytelling app where you would go to a place and like drop a pin of like a story so that you could like see like basically like a live-in setting kind of thing where you're reading the story in a setting where it's intended to be read. But all that coding makes you hungry, and so I wanted a burrito and went to a burrito place. And while I was there, this guy saw me in my coding shirt and he heard me talking to my classmate about like some of the code we were writing for my project. And he was like, "Oh, so you're at Dev Bootcamp. You're like, how do you like programming?" And I was like, "It's great. It's the best thing ever. I think it's like the best thing I've ever done in my life. I love this decision and I'm so happy that I made it." And I was just like really enthusiastic. Turns out that guy was hiring, and so that's how I got my first job. And what this kind of taught me is that enthusiasm begets enthusiasm. When you are excited about learning, people that are excited about talking about stuff want to talk to you because you're excited to hear it, right? When people want to be around you, like they're like you get to make these collisions that like you may not have made before, and like I mean people are great, but it can also like add a lot of value to like your own stuff. As it says on the slide, bothering people can be fun and productive. When you find people that are like knowledgeable in a thing that you would like to learn about, and again, you're enthusiastic and like you have that hunger for knowledge, a lot of times people are going to be like, "Please, I would love to talk to you about this thing that I've been learning about." I was lucky enough in that position to have really great mentors and be like constantly challenged. I walked into that not knowing a lick of PHP and knowing nothing about Drupal aside from what I Googled right before my job interview, and I was basically just like thrown challenges like, "Hey, we need to get this data from point A to point B. Do it? Yeah?" It's like, "Well, I don't know how to do it." "Okay, well, learn how to do it and do it." "Okay, cool, that's done. Great. Next, I need you to write like a cron job so that we can get this stuff on a schedule." "Excuse me, what's cron?" "Cool, that's your next task. Go learn that and then like apply it and then come back to me when you're done with that." And that was like invaluable to the way like the way that I've been able to like kind of jump in and learn things. I learned at such like a high rate because there were these people just like always available for like if I had a question, they would answer my question. They wouldn't be like, "You should know that," or like there was no like weird hierarchy. It was just people willing to like solve a problem and willing to help you solve a problem, and that was just great. The mentoring also works both ways. I, as a person who has only been a developer for, I guess, like a little over a year and a half now, even then, like even straight out of boot camp, I knew that I knew more than some people. You always will know something more than someone else. You don't have to be like the expert to be able to help someone. So what I did is I immediately signed up and helped mentor for Code Platoon, which is another coding boot camp that is open to veterans and their spouses. It's a really, really great program run by some really amazing people. And I knew that I didn't know a whole lot, but I knew that I could help someone that didn't know anything, and that I wanted to provide that for someone else because I was so lucky to have that when I was going through my boot camp. And again, mentoring people helps you reinforce your own learning. You have to know your stuff. unless you just like, if you're the type of person that's going to mentor someone, you're the type of person that probably doesn't want to tell them incorrect information. So mentoring holds you accountable to like really knowing what you're talking about, because otherwise you're setting someone else up for failure. And also like it's just real fun, and you get to help people, and it's great. But it does wonders for your learning, and people that like don't know about the thing that you're talking about will ask you some amazing questions that you never thought to ask yourself. And as always, like, show up for things. Like, and that's not to say like, be on time, and if you're on time, then you're late. So be there 15 minutes early, and that's on time. It's not what I mean by show up. I mean that like, just be present, and being present in the moment. You never know what like opportunities are going to fly at you, and it's just really great and amazing, like knowing like the amount of opportunities that have just kind of like appeared because I was in a room listening to people just say words, and just being present in a room. Like I cannot even begin to fathom like me wanting a burrito, and then some guy being like, you like coding? And I'm like, yeah, I like coding. And then like, now that's how I got introduced to Drupal. And now I am here telling people words. And that's like, who would have thought that like chain reaction would happen? I wouldn't have, but that's why it's important to just be present and like be enthusiastic just in your life, because it's real fun. And lots of nice things happen. So, how are you going to talk? Well, let's fast forward a little bit. So that was taking place over like the course of like 2017. It is now 2019. I feel like I am getting further and further more entrenched into the Drupal community. I still Google lots of things because I don't know everything, and there are so many people that know all the things on the internet, and it's great. But where I'm at now is just amazing. Like I am very happy to have started working in Drupal, because I've been exposed to like so many amazing people. Like this community is just the best community, and like I don't even like, I couldn't have ever fathomed being here right now talking to all you lovely people back in like 2016, when like it felt like my life was crumbling apart. Like the Drupal community, and especially like people that organize camps and get these like events together, are just so amazing and welcoming, and like it's amazing like how much I've been able to learn with like their help, and I'm excited for the future and to see what else there is to learn. So that's it. If y'all have any questions, feel free to ask them. I do not have a slide that says questions, but yeah. Yes?
I have a couple of questions. Please, if they're too technical, it's okay. Do you ever get that, when you Google your name, do you ever get, did you mean something else?
No.
And
yeah, so the question was, when I Google my name, do I ever get, did you mean something else? I used to.
Oh.
I used to get like Qymana or something like that. But now there's enough stuff just like out there in the Googleverse that like if I Google my name, it also could just be like my computer knows it's me, and it's just like, okay, I know that you didn't mean something else. But there's enough stuff just like on the internet. That I don't get that anymore for my own name.
And were Shaq and the cat mentoring each other, or were they just symbols of enthusiasm?
I'd like to think that they were mentoring each other.
I think it's them mentoring us in the end. Yeah.
Yes. At the end of the day, aren't we all just like a product of that kind of like wiggly enthusiasm? Shouldn't we strive to be Shaq and the wiggly cat just dancing? Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
Did you back the Critical Role Kickstarter?
Did I back? Yes, I did. For people that are listening, I'm wearing a Critical Role hoodie, and I did back the Critical Role Kickstarter, and I'm very excited about that. Yes?
What is the Critical Role Kickstarter?
Critical Role is, they're a bunch of voice actors who play D&D and stream it, and they have a Kickstarter to turn their campaign into like an animated series, and it's super duper. It's like there are many more zeros after the amount of money that they raised versus what they initially asked for. So, very excited.
It's currently the highest grossing Kickstarter for film, I believe.
Fantastic. Yeah. I'm gonna look stuff